Is the sky really falling on this West Virginia basketball team, or are we all overreacting a little bit? West Virginia falls to 5-2 after a tough trip to Charleston, South Carolina, with losses to Clemson and Xavier. We're going to break it all down here. Not a recap of those games. We've already done that. But we're going to break it down. Are you overreacting? Are you underreacting? Or what would a proper reaction to this start to the Mountaineer season look like? We're going to have you covered on this episode of Mountaineer Moment. This is the Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. From pregame to postgame coverage and breaking news, we've got you covered. Let's go. All right, welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Mountaineer Moment. This one's a special one because it is episode 100. Episode 100, hard to believe. We've been at this thing just since the end of August, and it's the end of November, so you do the math. We have been on a roll. About an episode per day at this rate. Simply incredible. I am blown away personally by just the support and the feedback and the comments and the subscriptions and the ratings and everything. So, and I will make another plea here. Hit that subscribe button for us. We want Mountaineer Moment to continue to grow in this community. We're creeping up on 100 or 400 subscribers, and we're, again, 100 episodes in, and so we would love to hit that mark, and then 500, and then 1,000, and just keep on going from there. So, again, my name's Troy. This is Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. And on this episode, we are talking about this Mountaineer basketball team who got off to a 5-0 start, had a 20-plus point win against Pitt, and you were all, if you're a Mountaineer fan, you were super stoked about that. You were, Ross Hodge for president, this, that, and Honor Huff Player of the Year, Honor Huff First Team All Big 12, like all sorts of reactions to the positive start for West Virginia. Well, then the Mountaineers left the state of West Virginia for the first time this season. They headed down to Charleston, South Carolina for a little 4-team bracket in the Shriners Children's Charleston Classic. I still have to slow down when I say that because it's like just a mouthful. But you head down there. It's, we talked about it here on Mountaineer Moment. It's a measuring stick opportunity. You get to play against some other, major conference opponents, and you get to find out where you're at as a team. And we said it. We said, you know what? Well, obviously, one of these teams is going to go 2-0. Two of these teams are going to split and go 1-1. And the other, one of these four teams is going to go 0-2. And I was like, it better not be the Mountaineers. It better not be us. We cannot allow ourselves, this team, we can't do it. Cannot go to Charleston, South Carolina, and not at least come back with one win. And that didn't happen. West Virginia falls. They lose 2 straight. They're the lone team that lost 2 games down in Charleston in that bracket, and it stings. It hurts right after that 5-0 start. The same people are probably questioning a lot of the things that they said. The same people are now overreacting in a different way, in a negative way, versus when it was a positive thing. Now, I do think, and again, it's my opinion, obviously, and I'm going to share it with you, what would be a proper reaction to this 5-2 start, in particular the 0-2 trip to Charleston. We're going to talk about what a proper way to respond, what a proper way to look at this would be. Is it panic? Is it not? Is it somewhere in the middle? Let you know a little secret. It's somewhere in the middle. We're going to talk about, just some hypothetical. And I did this for the football team early on in their season too, and it was fun. So I'm going to do it for the basketball team, and I think it was the right time to do it. Underreactions, right? What would be someone who's like a little careless in as far as like how they're treating this trip to Charleston? Say, it's just November. It's whatever. That kind of thing. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about some like massive overreactions, right? Whether it's something I've seen or heard or something I'm just going to make up on the fly that would be like, all right, you're overdoing it a little bit there, bud. You're overdoing it. So, and we'll start with that one. And, I'll give you a few overreactions, a few underreactions, then I'll talk about what a proper response to this start should be. Firstly, overreaction. Overreaction would be to say that, we're not going to make the tournament. It's over. This team's 500 at best. They might be, but we don't know that yet. Period. Like, we don't know that yet. you're overreacting by saying you already know how this thing's going to unfold come March. Let me let you in on another secret. You don't. You're not that smart. You don't know. I don't know. An overreaction would be to say, I know 4 months from now what this team's going to look like, how good they're going to be, and it's not going to be good. It's going to be ugly. We're going to, go win 4 games in the Big 12 maybe. Our only chance of making the tournament is by winning the Big 12 championship, and we're not going to do that because obviously we're not good on neutral sites in November, so why would we be in March? That's an overreaction. That's an overreaction. We don't know what this team's going to look like. It was a little bit of a measuring stick, and we know what they look like now, and we're not thrilled with it. I will say, obviously, for much of that Clemson game, I was pretty happy. I was pretty stoked. And if they just held on, I would have been pretty stoked. But they didn't, and they struggled at the end. And, you hope that they learned some things from that. Obviously, the big storyline against Xavier was the three-point parade, 16 of 25. 16 of 25, 64%. Xavier lit you up from beyond the arc, and you simply had no answer for it in the 10-point loss to a team that has lost 3 games, to a team that's lost to Santa Clara and Iowa. So that would be overreaction number 2, is that Xavier sucks, and we should never lose to a team like that. Ever, ever, period, ever. Like, never, ever, ever. It's an overreaction. Xavier's not a bad basketball program. They're in a rebuild. They're trying to figure things out. And, well, they figured some things out against West Virginia. And not to mention against the Georgia Bulldogs team, who was averaging like 100 points a game coming into this tournament. And Xavier had almost had that game won in a great comeback from them. 78-77 was the final in favor of Georgia. And it was a Smurf Millender three-pointer with a handful of seconds left that gave Georgia the win. I mean, they held Georgia, who scored 53 on them in the first half. It was a tale of two halves. They scored 25 points in the second half. That Xavier defense did some things. And maybe Xavier's figuring some stuff out. Maybe West Virginia's figuring some stuff out too, like about themselves and what they need to do. And we don't know where Xavier's going to finish their season. I will say, as part of a teaser for like a proper way to react to this, I will say this, like, that very well could be, at the end of the season, a bad-looking loss for West Virginia based on what Xavier does the rest of the way. But an overreaction would say it's an awful loss already. It's gonna leave us out of the tournament because of that. You should never lose to that team. What were we doing? Coach Hodge needs to shake things up. Coach Hodge needs to, bench Jasper Floyd and start Amir Jenkins like right now. I mean, there's people reacting like that. There's people who've given up on Trace and Eaglestaff already, and he just had his best game as a Mountaineer against Xavier in a loss. I get it, and that's, the loss overshadows that. But he had 20 points on 8 of 15, I believe. Yeah, 8 of 15 points. 8 of 15 field goals, and 20 points for him. That felt good. But an overreaction, you would have been out on him a long time ago. Or not a long time ago, out on him before this game. Let's say that, because there's only been a few games. But that would be an overreaction. And I think one more overreaction would be, as you go back to that game against Clemson, and I might catch some heat for this. I might have already in that Clemson recap episode. It's an overreaction to think that, like, teams don't lose games like that. I don't want to say often or regularly, but, like, it happens. Like, I mean, there was Mountaineer fans treating it like that should never happen. It never happens. It only happens to us. Why can't we have nice things? Like, why does it always happen to us? Why do we blow a big lead? And on and on and on and on and on. But the truth of the matter is, it wasn't that big of a lead. You never really felt like this game was put away for West Virginia, that they could just cruise to victory. And Clemson, it's as simple as this. Like, they made a couple threes in a row. You missed a couple shots. They were right back in it. They came, they took the lead, and they never let go. I mean, You don't have to overreact and say that could never happen. It only happens to us, and we can't close out games. It's going to be a long year. Like it happens in the NBA, in college basketball, in high level basketball. 8 to 10 point leads with a handful of minutes shrink. And sometimes that team that blows, quote unquote, that lead. Sometimes you lose the game. Just happens. It just happens. So stop freaking out and overreacting to that. Again, might catch some flack for that, and I get it. Like they should have won the game, but there's a difference between saying they should have won the game and saying, "Oh, how did that? Like that's impossible, right? Like that's just it's a big difference. You know what I mean? It's just a big difference." So we'll move to some underreaction. So that's overreaction. You're over the top. You're saying the sky is falling. It's over. This thing is a wrap. Move on to next season, and you should never lose to those. You should never lose those 2 games. You should never give up 16 out of 25 from 3, which I get, but. And it wasn't all bad defense from West Virginia. There was obviously lots of open shots to get 16 to 25, but credit to Xavier. Got to give them credit at some point. They made the shots. All right, underreaction. Underreaction would be to say, it's not even Thanksgiving yet. It's only November. There's such a long way to go. And, these 2 losses don't really mean anything. It's just a little tournament with a few teams and a couple, 100,000, maybe a couple hundred fans. A couple thousand fans in the stands. Who really cares? Not a big deal. The committee for Selection Sunday doesn't really weigh in on these games. It's all good. We just gotta hope we get better for Big 12 play. But there's nothing to worry about. That's an underreaction because there are some things to worry about, right? Ross Hodge and his staff and these players. You take the trip to Charleston after a 5-0 start and you lose 2 games, you're going to start looking in the mirror a little bit, start trying to identify how can we take what we know about this team right now and how can we get better, period, right? And an underreaction is to say that we don't have to get better because it's all good. It happens. It's a couple losses and there's a difference. There's a difference. And an underreaction says that these 2 losses don't mean anything. They do mean something. They do mean something. Ask any bubble team ever. Games in November mean something. They just do, and it's not a good thing to go 0-2. It's just not. You don't have to overreact to it, but don't underreact to it either. All right, there's a balance in there. Another underreaction would be, again, kind of already have touched on that, but what are you going to do? A team just got really hot from 3. You're not going to win that game. 16 to 25, that's crazy. They were just unstoppable. There's nothing you can do. Well, I would argue that there is something you can do. You can get up on them and play better defense, period, right? Like 16 of 25 don't happen. They didn't make all 16 of those with a guy just right in their grill defending and contesting a 3. There were lots of open looks. There were lots of sets that they ran that just got shooters open, and that's a cause for concern. Don't underreact to that. That's a cause for concern. It just is. And there's other concerns on this team. Like, we mentioned Trayson Eaglestaff, and he, aside from this game against Xavier where he played well, at least offensively, aside from that, like he struggled this year. And I think there's a proper way to react to his struggles, and it's to say, it's not to sit here and say he's a bust. Overreaction, like he sucks, he's a bust, he's this, he needs to go back to North Dakota. He's not cut out for Big 12. It's going to be a nightmare when we get into Big 12. Like, again, we don't know that. Pump the brakes. An underreaction, though, would be to say, everything's going to be just fine. He's going to work it all out, and he's going to be all right. There is concern. I love that Trey Eaglestaff is on this team. I think he is still going to bring something very, very, very valuable to this team. But we haven't seen it yet, aside from Xavier, which is a welcome sign, and I hope it's a sign of things to come. But don't underreact to that or whatever else. Whatever other concern you have with this team that is warranted, right? Because there's some unwarranted concerns that are like, dude, what are you talking about? But if you're wise enough as a fan, whether it's Eagle staff, whether it's Jasper Floyd, whether it's Obi Oha and his recent struggles in Charleston, or scheme-wise, offense, defense, and things you don't like that you're seeing, and this will transition us into this proper reaction. There's a middle ground, right? It's really easy to overreact. It's really easy to just be like, nonchalant, it's all good, and underreact. But there's a healthy middle place to be, and I think that's where we need to be as Mountaineer fans. We absolutely, positively should be concerned a little bit about the fact that we went to Charleston, went 0-2. We should be concerned with the fact that a team went off on us from beyond three-point land. We should be concerned that against Clemson, you could have put it away, right? I said earlier it was never put away. Obviously, it wasn't, and it never felt like it either. But if you get a couple more stops, you get a couple more buckets, you extend a 10-point lead to 15 or 16 versus the opposite of it, coming down. You put them away, and you're playing on Sunday for the first place game instead of the third place game. So that one stung, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. Hodge mentioned it post-game against Clemson that, obviously you didn't get what you wanted in the second half. There were a lot of things you didn't like that you were watching. So a proper reaction just doesn't side with only one extreme. A proper reaction doesn't overdo it or underdo it, but it views it in light of the grand scheme of things. You have the big picture. Again, this is still a team that's very, very new to playing together. This is a team, albeit a neutral site game, but their first trip away from Morgantown. You can bet they're very much looking forward to being back in Morgantown on Sunday. And to answer the question of, is the sky falling? Well, absolutely not. It's not falling. Did you want to win at least one in Charleston? Yes, you really, really did. But you got an opportunity to get right. You got an opportunity to learn from this and fix it. And, you can, in a sense, moving forward, if you have an impressive season and put that together, where these losses don't mean, quote unquote, as much. You find yourselves on the bubble on the outside looking in March. And again, it's so far away. I'm not trying to do that all the time, but you find yourself on the outside looking in, and you can look back to a blown lead against Clemson and a game against Xavier where you just struggled immensely to defend. You're going to be kicking yourself. So the games matter. And West Virginia needs to, against Mercyhurst, and we'll preview the action, of course, for you here on Mountaineer Moment, as we've been every game, previews. You got to take something, you got to learn from it. Because if you don't learn from this trip to Charleston, then you're not going to get better. And you got Coppin State after Mercyhurst, and then don't look now, but Wake Forest on December 6th. And Wake Forest is a team that has 2 losses this season to number 6 Michigan and number 15 Texas Tech by 1 point apiece. They beat Memphis by 1 point, down in Nassau, or down in wherever it was in the Bahamas. So that's going to be a challenge. There are still non-conference challenges remaining. You got Wake Forest. You got the following Saturday, Ohio State on the 13th. And then, we're not far. Time's flying by. We're not far from conference play right after the holidays. Iowa State, a trip to Iowa State, January 2nd. I think that's going to be very fun. They're going to be loud and obnoxious, and that's a tough, tough, tough place to win. So in this non-conference, in these games where you should win, Mercyhurst, Coppin State, Little Rock, Mississippi Valley State, stack wins, but be effective at preparing yourself for conference play. And, Mountaineers obviously against power conference teams this season, basketball-wise, Pitt, Clemson, Xavier. You're 1-2 so far, and in the non-conference coming up, you got 2 more opportunities, Wake Forest and Ohio State. Let's win them. Right, that's part of building a resume in the non-conference is winning these games. You can't go 1-4 in the non-conference against power conference opponents. That's not a good look. And, a proper reaction to where West Virginia started realizes that you need to win against teams that are good in order to be a good team, right? It's obvious. And it's just something that you got to fix it. You got to get right. You got the 2 losses to 2 power conference teams is not good. That's not good by any stretch of the imagination. So you got to start winning games against some big boy teams. And I think it's in them, right? Again, Clemson, you had that one. Clemson ended up beating Georgia, so that could end up being a, quality loss. I even hate that word, but Clemson knocked off Georgia in overtime in that thrilling game too. There was a lot of really, really good games down in Charleston. So fans, even though if you went as a West Virginia fan, disappointing, but you were treated to some good basketball. Again, I still think that Clemson-West Virginia game, that was a really, really good college basketball game that just didn't go our way. And sometimes it's as simple as that. So, all right, this has been another episode of Mountaineer Moment. Again, a special one, 100. We're going to be in triple digits for a while here on Mountaineer Moment for a very long time. But this is a show, again, just started at the beginning of football season, and we're 4 months in, 100 episodes in, plugging away, and super, super, super thankful. Did I say 4 months? I can't. 9, 10, 3 months in. What am I saying? End of August to end of November, 3 months in, and plugging away at this thing. So thank you for your support. Thank you for being here. The sky is not falling, by the way. Everything's all right, but you gotta get better. And teams are allowed to do that, by the way. So episode 100 is in the books. We'll see you next time on Mountaineer Moment.